Stay a while and listen.
About Legend of Grimrock 2. Legend of Grimrock 2 was developed by the Finnish indie video game company called Almost Human, and big props to those guys. Before making Legend of Grimrock, they did quite few things, but never really something this big, and I'm quite glad that they did end up making it, because it is a game that offered me many hours of fun. I played the original Legend of Grimrock way back when it was first released, but I have to admit that I never finished it. I did like the RPG elements, and I did much mind the controls and progression of it, but for some reason I quit it before finishing. And while playing the second one, I noticed why I stuck with it much longer. The repeating corridors of the first game just got tedious, but you can see the difference in the second one right at the start when you get stranded on a beach and get a full look at the colors and an environment. The game boasts a huge open world with multiple levels and even parts where you go underwater. You can pick where you want to go, even though some parts are locked until you complete certain objectives around the map. After that, it just gets better. You go through forests, next to rivers, and even a desert. The movement in the game is grid-based, which basically means that you can only move 4 sides: left, right, back and forward. And you can either use your mouse or keyboard to look to the sides. Of course, it wouldn't be a dungeon crawl if there were no dungeons. Most, if not all, zones have dungeons in them, and some of them are quite large. Sometimes I found myself just running through the same dungeon for an hour and inspecting every nook and cranny for hidden switches or treasures. Which brings me to a part that I don't really hate, but which annoyed me sometimes. In the dungeons of the game, there are switches in the walls that are a bit easy to overlook, and I know that I might get hate for saying that, but come on. If I get tossed in a room full of deadly slimes and start throwing fireballs around and slashing at them, I don't think too much about looking at the walls. And sometimes you can get really deep into a dungeon without really noticing that you skipped something. So that's not a really big problem, but I really wanted to mention it. Besides looking for switches and hidden treasures, you get to do a lot. And when I say a lot, I do mean a lot of puzzles. Some of them are easy enough. There's a switch, you weight it down with a rock, done. Easy. But later on, they become quite tricky, and to solve them you must find clues from the dungeon or from the overworld, which can be notes, signs, or even huge stone heads with glowing eyes. Most of the game's puzzles I was able to complete with intuitive understanding of the game mechanics, while at other times I had to run around for a few minutes until I found out what I have to do either by luck or, and please don't send death threats to my home, by looking the solutions up on the internet. I mean, come on, the puzzle for the archive, I guess is just more than my action-addicted brain can solve. Now, on the total opposite spectrum from the puzzles, we got combat. That's where it's at for me. I just love going around the map and find stuff to fight, which is done by clicking on one of the 2 buttons under your character's portrait, which resemble the left and the right hand of the character. You can equip them with basically anything, although characters will be only proficient with those weapons if you pick the appropriate skill for it. You get 1 skill point for every level you get, plus the ones that start, which are predetermined if you pick a pre-made group or which you pick if you choose to create a custom group. I would recommend to start with a pre-made group if you are new to this type of game. Your characters can be customized in many ways, and it's all open-ended, although different races can be better for different types of combat. For instance, the Minotaur is a great front row melee fighter, and he has a perk called Headhunter, which gives him +1 strength for every skull he has in his inventory. Or you can just pick humans, which are as usual the balanced option for any spec you want to go with. The rest is quite simple. You kill enemies and get XP that lets you choose new skills, and those skills determine how good you are at using certain types of equipment or casting spells. Besides that, you have alchemy that lets you craft potions, which is quite useful at all times, and I do recommend to have at least 1 alchemist in your group. So, to wrap this all up, Legend of Grimrock 2 is an amazing RPG, both visually and technically, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants to spend hours in the immersive world of Legend of Grimrock. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.